on January 31st, 2024, inside Ironwood State Prison, which is located in Riverside County, California. A contraband investigation was being conducted, and an inmate was being escorted across the facility's D yard. However, the inmate would take an opportunity and headbutt one of the corrections staff. From there, 200 other prisoners would begin attacking corrections officers. Fists were flying, rocks were being thrown, and in the end, multiple non-lethal impact rounds were fired into the ground, and chemical agents were also let loose to try to stop the incident. When the dust settled, 8 correction staff were injured, 1 inmate would be injured, and one fact was very, very clear. Violence was on the rise inside of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And that one fact and the one reason for the violence on the rise was the death of an infamous Mexican Mafia leader and shot caller. Michael Mosca Torres had been murdered 6 to 7 months prior, and infighting was beginning to happen within eMe.
8 staff members and 1 prisoner were hospitalized after a 200-person inmate riot at a Riverside County facility. It started at Ironwood State Prison, which is about 22 miles away from the Arizona border, as guards escorted an inmate across the yard during a contraband investigation. Officials said it escalated into a riot when the prisoner headbutted one of the staff members as an estimated 200 other prisoners rushed the guards, sticking them with fists and rocks. To bring the riot to an end, officers deployed chemical agents and fired off a warning shot as well as non-lethal impact rounds. CDCR said the riot caused a 24-hour modified programming protocol for all yards and day rooms in facilities throughout California. The 9 hospitalized were discharged the following day.
The California State Prison is investigating the stabbing death of an inmate. According to investigators, 2 inmates, Juan Martinez and Ray Martinez, attacked and killed 59-year-old Michael Torres. Torres had been serving a 133-year sentence for a list of crimes, including attempted murder, and was a third-strike offender. The inmates accused of killing Torres are also serving life sentences. Officials are limiting inmate movement right now while the case is being investigated.
I want to focus on what I will call the jails indictment, which outlines a criminal enterprise run by the Mexican Mafia that controlled drug trafficking and extortion activities throughout the LA County jail system. The indictment focuses on Jose Landa Rodriguez, who was the leader of the Mexican Mafia in the LA County jail system, and who oversaw a group of gang leaders and soldiers who imposed his will on inmates in the facilities. The jail's indictment alleges that Landa Rodriguez controlled all drug trafficking in the jails. The organization would arrange for cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin to be smuggled into the jails, often through accomplices who hid the drugs in body cavities and who got themselves intentionally arrested on minor charges. The organization would then sell drugs to inmates. The Mexican Mafia had a range of supporters that participated in the racketeering enterprise. For example, there were a number of associates who smuggled drugs into the jails, and there were people who passed messages directing criminal activities between those in the jail and gang leaders on the streets. This communications network, which often included wives and girlfriends, was a vital link that allowed incarcerated Mexican Mafia leaders to communicate with gang leaders on the streets. But wives and girlfriends were not the only link to the outside world. This morning, we also arrested a lawyer who is accused of being a key facilitator for the organization. If they are convicted, many of the defendants will face decades in federal prison, and they will be scattered to prisons all over the country, far from their power base here in Southern California. With this morning's operation, we have delivered a significant blow to a cold-blooded prison gang and their associates. The jail's indictment dismantled a criminal enterprise that affected many of the jail's 15,000-plus inmates and the overall security of the facilities.
Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Green Lit Gang TV. Hope y'all having a blessed day. Really quick before we jump into the video, if you do like it, please like, subscribe, and comment on the channel. I do put a lot of work into these, and I do really hope you guys enjoy the videos. So today we're going to be talking about a riot that broke out in Ironwood State Prison. The reason I chose to cover this story, wanted to change it up just a little bit, was one, I'll be honest, because I read the headline about 200 prisoners rushing a handful of correction staff. The fact that nobody died really blew my mind. Even after firing, they said they were firing mini 14 warning shots like into the crowd. I mean, I'm sure they were aiming probably at the ground, but still, it just takes one being just a little off one way or the other somebody gets killed. But the fact that actually nobody died was surprising and a good thing. But I also thought the overtone of this was that violence had really been kicking off across the state within the CDCR, and they believe it was tied back to the brutal murder of Michael Mosca or Fly Torres, a very infamous and notorious Mexican Mafia leader. And two things about Mosca that I kind of picked up from reading about him and watching some stuff on him. One, he was a very well-respected, feared individual who had a ton of power. The reason I put up that video about the LA County jail drug trade is because he was overseeing and controlling a lot of the drugs that were flowing in and out of the LA County jail. But two, he was known as a very vicious and violent and someone that showed no mercy, and not just on his opposition, but on his own kind, almost more so. We're going to get into that in just a minute. But first, let's read from this article about the actual riot that took place, and then we're going to get into some background on Michael Mosca Fly Torres. I did do a video on him some months back, so if you can, go back and check that out. I encourage it. I got a lot of different videos up, guys. I try to upload 3-4 times a week, at least, sometimes 5 times. I hope you guys are enjoying them. But here's the article about the prison riot that took place January 31st, 2024. A riot broke out at Ironwood State Prison on January 31st, 2024, triggering, quote, a threat assessment that locked down every facility run by the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. 8 staffers and 1 prisoner were hospitalized after the brawl. All were released the following day. I still am like, that is crazy that 200 individuals rushed at guards and you don't have a single death. But a huge group of 200 prisoners rushed at guards during a contraband investigation on the prison yard, which began after a prisoner headbutted a guard who was escorting him. And I believe this happened on D yard. Neither the prisoner nor the guard he assaulted was named. Fists and rocks flew during the melee before guards subdued the crowd with, quote, chemical agents and, quote, non-lethal impact rounds. Afterward, prison officials instituted a 24-hour modified programming protocol restricting activities at yards and day rooms in all state prison facilities. Investigators said the following day that they had so far identified 30 prisoners who participated in the uprising. Movement in Facility D at the prison also remained restricted while the investigation continued. Located near the Arizona border, Ironwood is a level 3 state prison in CDCR's 4-level security designation system. And that was kind of one thing about it is when you do look it up, Ironwood opened in 94. It's just a minimum to a medium, but you still have very, very high violent offenders, very large, a lot of gang leaders. It is a mix of GP and SNY. We're going to get to that in just a second. I just kind of want to say it really quick. Now, really quick, I have shouted this channel out before, and I want to make sure I shout it out once again. Go over, check it out. It's called A Convict's Perspective, run by Big Flacco. He does a really, really good job of breaking stuff down. That guy knows his stuff every which way. I was a fan of his channel. I was watching his channel before I even ever made mine. But when I'm doing research on this stuff, a lot of times he's covered similar content. So just reading off of what, some notes I took off of what he said. He had mentioned the inmate being escorted, headbutt a staff member. The corrections officers attacked man who was handcuffed, and this kind of upset the other inmates. And the inmates rushed staff, started throwing punches as well as rocks. And he said that they did use a Mini 14 to fire off warning shots. And then talks about how the 8 corrections officers were injured, 1 inmate as well. And he is the first one that brought up the ties back to the death of Michael Mosca or Fly Torres. And he also mentioned that he wasn't sure if it was a PC or an active yard. He guessed that it was an active yard. That's what he thought. But again, he did not confirm that. And he also made a really good point. This is something I want to talk about is, okay, a lot of times you hear about the inmates attacking the guards and stuff. Well, the guards are going to want to get theirs too. Those are grown men in there. Those are guys that go to work every day. And yeah, a lot of them are dirty. A lot of them are bringing contraband in, but still, we're men, right? So someone does something to you or you're kind. I think he called it like a green wall that had kind of, and the green wall is just kind of like the blue wall, which is, they talk about police officers, like a code of silence. You look out for your own. He called it like a green wall, I think is what Big Flacco referred to it. And he had referred back to a prison riot that happened back in like the early 2000s. And that's kind of when it first started getting developed of, hey, Nobody's going to look out for us. These inmates are trying to kill us. We got to look out for our own. And you do whatever it takes, basically, to go home at night. And I understand that. I do. I understand that. If you are a corrections officer, it's easy to say, well, they signed up for it. Well, yeah, they did. They signed up. They get a job. They get paid. But still, when you are being attacked and you're outnumbered and you don't feel like the administration's maybe got your back, and especially we've talked about so much in 2025, how CDCR, the administration, the government, Jeff McCumber, Gavin Newsom, it is a shit show up in the admin's level. And we had said it, especially early on in this year, how their decisions directly affect and put in danger the prison staff, the corrections officers, the nurses, the doctors, the people that come and speak with inmates at work, the mental health counselors, all of them. They are the ones that are at the most danger and the most risk. So he made a comment that, hey, there's going to be retaliation, 1,000%. You're going to rush us and beat us up and outnumber us and try to take our lives. Then we are going to make your lives a living hell, and we are going to get our get back one way or the other. And I think that was just a really, really good point to make. But once he said the name Michael Mosca Fly Torres, I'm like, boom, I go back into my archive of videos, and I found one that I did on him. From there, I kept reading about him. Well, I came across a Reddit page that had those pictures I put up of him. One looked like from when he was out on the streets, actually, like in the early 2000s. He's a much younger man. He died at the age of 59. And then there's another one where he's posing like a Denver Broncos. He's in prison, something like related to football. Must be during football season. Maybe he's a Broncos fan, not sure. But it talks about how there's a caption: Mosca was brutally killed by Cisco, it said MS, and Beaver, OVS Black Angels, in what seemed to be a sanctioned hit. He was 59 at the time of his murder and had been serving 133 years to life following a 2003 arrest for attempted murder and other charges. Now, I did put that news clip up of the individuals. Those are obviously their handles. Their real names are in that news article, the news clip I put up. But I wanted to read a couple of comments that I thought were really interesting, right? And they all kind of center around the same thing. They say he was notorious for putting hits on Serranos in prison that didn't deserve to be greenlit. He got a lot of solid foos whacked or sent to SNY. And then there's another comment. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what got him killed. Only certain inmate members know why. But one thing's for sure, it's that Mosca had a violent, treacherous reputation. And in the end, karma caught up to him. There's one more I want to read from. Me personally, I don't think Mosca's murder, it was in response to someone had said, because I also did a video on this, there was some beef going on with MS-13 in Ironwood. Some dudes got killed, I believe, in federal prison. I forget exactly where. I don't want to mix up. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but they had a beef going on. There were some murders that had been committed. And yeah, right there it said beef in the feds. And it seems that Cisco was the hitter because, number one, he was close to Mosca. Number two, a carnal has to be one of the principal hitters when a carnal is hit. And then like a correct ideal hit. Cisco is also a newer MA member, so killing Mosca could have been a way of solidifying his status. Kind of like a May of making your bones, right? In certain gangs, that's like basically, okay, you got to kill to get in and show that you are worthy. I agree with the idea that this is a very violent individual. This is someone who has had a lot of people killed or killed a lot of people. Basically, he's ruined a lot of lives. And especially if you're on the yard and you're on mainline and you're active and you're putting in work for your gang, and this guy, for whatever reason, doesn't like you or takes something you do the wrong way, and all of a sudden he either puts a hit out on you or green lights you, or he designates you for SNY and says, you better go PC up because we're going to kill you. And then your entire existence is changed. Your entire identity is ruined because of this one individual. I do believe in karma. What goes around is going to come back around. What you put out into the world is what you're eventually going to get back. And I just don't feel like you can tell me any different. So I really, really want to know what you guys think. Please leave a comment down below and engage in the conversation. Really thought this was interesting to touch on and cover. And until next time, hope you guys have a great weekend. Peace.